You probably knew this already. We do classes in person. Right now, we have just 2 on the schedule. Next weekend, we'll be at AJ Conkle's place, Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for an advanced standalone tuning class. And July 13th and 14th, we'll be in the Motor City, that's Detroit for you Canadians, at Full Throttle Speed with another advanced standalone class. Both of these classes will feature less lecture, a lot more tuning, covering advanced topics like fuel pressure compensation, flex fuel, and just about anything else we can pack into a 2-day session. Lots of dyno time and good food are a guarantee. Hope to see you there. Register at RealTuners.com. Good evening and welcome to RealTuners Radio episode 89. After a 1-week hiatus, tonight we're bringing in a special guest, an all-around good tuner, Justin Shearer. Yeah, we all know about the TV shows, but did you know this guy is a well-rounded tuner of many topics? Standalone EFI, OEM ECUs, chassis tuning, converter selection, you name it, this guy's had to hustle with it. And he's learned a lot along the way, and hopefully is going to share some of his experiences with us tonight. Also appearing as our usual group of hosts, John Bewley of Little John's Motorsport Solutions, Bill Fowler from Big Hat Racing, Brian Barnhill, TunerTools.com, Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development, Dan Parker, the only truly famous guy on here, and Scott Evans of Helix Tuning and also the lead engineer of this show. And finally, me, Scott Clark, tuner, producer, and part-time inmate at the Big Lake Resort. Now let's get this pile of crap started and make some passes. What's going on? Hey, we're like 2.5 minutes into this and I've managed not to fuck it up so far. Check it out. That's good. We're actually running the show from my house tonight because Evans is doing some huge work thing. He's still at the office. But anyway, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks. For me, it's been 3 weeks. 2 weeks. 3 weeks. Whatever. But welcome back, RealTuners Radio. I don't even know how many people are listening. Let the other guys watch that stuff. I am manning the controls here. But anyhow, real quick, just a reminder, classes coming up this weekend after this one. Let me pull it up here and get it on the stream. Let's see, June 8th and 9th. That's the 2-day advanced standalone class. So that's your Haltech Mega Squirt, whatever. He's got Haltech experts on site. Got me. I cover the Mega Squirt and the Holly stuff. FuelTech, pretty much everything you want to talk about for standalones, and 3 or 4 cars that we're going to tune in the process on his really nice dyno. So that's at Endless Performance, AJ Conkle's shop in Milwaukee. And then in July, same class at in Detroit at Full Throttle Speed, Mike and Steve Lick's shop. Very cool place. We've done basic classes there before. Definitely worth checking out if you are in the Detroit area. That class, I think both of these are getting close to full up. There's probably 4 or 5 seats left. So somebody sign up quick because I'm guessing those ones will lock up completely. Anyhow, hold on. I'm getting chat messages here. I'm in the toilet bowl sonically, says Bill. Sorry if I sound like ass. We'll try and fix it as we go. Let me bring in the guys here. I hear the guys talking. They're talking about me. Can nobody hear me or am I screwing up or what, Bill?
I hear you just fine.
Okay.
I hear you just fine.
Sounds clear.
All right, cool. Good. All right.
I think you sound sexy.
You're good shit, man. Anybody else got shit they want to talk about happened in the last week or two before we get right to it and not waste our guests' time this evening?
At some point tonight, I'd like to give a shout out for what Bewley and his, I forget the name, John, are doing with the cool little switches for the professional product stuff.
That's my boy Walker Winsler, diesel guy from up in West Virginia. A little project he started with the 2-switch panel that kind of generated in the diesel world there with the 48 RE Dodge transmission. And Walker hit me up and wanted me to put a feeler out into the gas community to see if there might be a demand for those panels for the 3 shifters that he had a design made for. And it turns out that thing's going to turn out to be a fairly well-received piece based on the reception that it's gotten from that one little post I put up.
Badass. No, it sounds like he was doing stuff with this trans brake button that we were trying to do programmatically in the like the smart wires or with the Holly ECU. But very neat shit. Oh, cool. So let's, without further ado, I'm trying to decide on the appropriate introduction for this guy. It's pretty funny the way I keep going back to the first time I met you, Justin, and it was pretty hilarious because all I know is like the guys at Proline were like, "Hey, you're gonna go out to Oklahoma City. You're gonna meet these guys on this Street Outlaws TV show or whatever." And I hadn't even really watched it, and so I was like, "All right, whatever." And I show up out there, and Justin's super polite right off the bat, but like I meet Sean, he's 30 seconds behind you, and as Sean gives the best intro ever. I think it was, "Who the fuck is this? That ain't Steve Petty." Literally like, all right, I don't know what's going on here. I'm here to put a FuelTech on somebody's car. But anyway, that was
well, at the time you have to understand that we, were we had to be very guarded, we had our guards up basically just because there were so many people that were trying to get involved with the show and with us, and there were so many parts coming in every day, people wanting us to put this part on their car or that part, and every one we did screwed the cars up and slowed them down. And so
I understand that now then, because I mean you had a perfectly good working fast XFI on the car that you had gotten running yourself, and you were like, "Look, dude, you can put a FuelTech on here, but if it doesn't run as good or better, and we are taking it to my dyno into the track or whatever, our test hits, then you're pulling that shit right off and putting that fast back on."
And Eric Dillard is one of the smartest men I've ever met, and he knows what he's doing. I wouldn't, say I don't think he claims to be a tuner of any facet, but he says. He told me back in the day, he said, "Well, you don't have a Proline engine, so..." Fuck, what happened? Where'd it go?
Did I lose him?
Still there?
Yeah, you're here.
There you are. Okay. He said, "Well, you don't have a Proline engine, so you're the, a perfect test bed of moving to FuelTech because everybody else that we've, talked about moving to FuelTech, they got Proline stuff." So it's like, we want somebody that's not a Proline customer per se to switch over to it and tell us what they think. And so I was like, "Hey man, look, we're filming. I have to race every weekend, and every race is the biggest race of my life. So yes, I want to be involved and I'll do anything to be involved. But at the same time, we can't slow the car down or make it where it doesn't run." And so, of course, me, I was naive and thinking Steve Petty was showing up with a, team of people to work on my car. And
instead,
I
you
get
this
one guy
fucking
from
clown.
Nebraska or Kansas or somewhere.
Right.
and you were like, "Oh my God, the car is still running." And I was like, "Yeah, what do you mean?" And you're like, "I thought it was ready. I thought it was like ripped out or already ready to go." I was like, "No, it's running."
No, it ran perfect. I'm like, I'm going to take out a perfectly good other ECU. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, but I'll have to put up this. I dug up the pictures from 2014, but carry on. Tell your story. I'll dig up the pictures.
Yeah, no, it was just funny how we met,
Yeah. No, it was, and then from there it was 8 days. You guys had great hospitality. It was super good time.
A lot of people meet Scott the same way.
Just shows up to install EFI on your car or whatever. Just hangs out for a week and makes friends and gets fat and eats your food and then goes home. But we spent 8 days.
And before that, I was a little anxious because before that, I was a wannabe tuner. Still a wannabe tuner. I do not consider myself a tuner, and there are people that tune for a living, and there are people that are real, what I would consider tuners. And I don't consider myself one of those at all. I'm the worst hack there is, and I'll admit it. And any tune that you've ever seen of mine is hacked all to death. But I had been on the internet for a couple of years, talking trash back and forth to guys like Scott Clark.
Right.
And so when he showed up, I was like, "Oh, great. This is the guy that I've shit on and told him how great my carburetor is for 2 years."
Right. No, we had some. Yeah, I went back to the way I remember it was like on day 2. I had seen the show because Dillard told me to do my homework, so I watched one of the episodes, and I caught the episode where somebody was talking about the drag week guys, blah, blah, blah. And actually their point was right. As I went on in the years, I realized that you guys were right about that. But, oh God, I was super defensive of my drag week guys. I mean, because I had tuned McIntyre. I hadn't tuned for Larson yet, but I had, a whole bunch of good guys with class records, and I was happy about Drag Week. Well, you know, so I made a big rant on Speed Talk or something about it. I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna see that. And sure enough, day 2, here comes Chief, and he's like, hey, we got to talk about something, man. But it ended up working out good. I mean, the coolest thing, I'm sitting here going through my pictures from my phone I had back then. It's like 3 phones ago or whatever, but I'd save them on his hard drives. And, you know, it's funny, the pictures go from a series of, it looks like you went through 5 races after we put the FuelTech on that car, and we all put our heads into tuning as much as we could. I mean, you were working on chassis stuff, converter stuff. You were switching converters at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You were fucking around with springs, shock settings. God, you had so much going on just besides the EFI guy. And I see now, I'm like, why did you got huge balls just to trust some guy to come in there and work on your car like that. I mean, looking back on this. But anyway, I'm looking back and it looks like there were 5 weekends and I'd get a couple of simple questions, nothing hard from you. You figured it out quick. And then I remember, well, I'm seeing this on my pictures here, that last race, all I got back that evening, I'd get like these 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning messages from you on WhatsApp. And the last one I got was just the picture of the crown thing that you guys,
Yep.
I don't know if they still runs around or whatever, but that was fucking cool. We felt really good. I know the Proline guys all felt really good about that too. Because they didn't really
it was,
follow
there was a few decisions over the years, you know, that I've looked back on. There's a few things that were big, you know, risks and taking apart a running car to put something like FuelTech that nobody had ever heard of. And that, you know, everything's in Portuguese and, you know, it was a tough decision at the time, but I wanted to be a part of it so bad. And I believed in Dillard so much and what he had told me. And even at the time, Petty was still on the fence about it. He was like, no, it's cool as hell. But if your car runs and you know, cause Petty's a guy that wins races and that's all he cares about is, you know, getting to the starting line, staging the car, winning the race, driver doing his job. And he's like, man, you know, it's not really that figured out yet. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to be involved in everything Dillard was telling me. I bit into it and I believed in it so much that we did it. And man, that's one of the only things I've ever done that I don't regret. Like that was
just tossing it on there and it ended up being world good. Well, and it's the support you get from those guys. They're good dudes.
And it was the support from you. You literally stayed here and lived with us and went street racing and testing and dynoing and all the dumb shit that we do. You did that for, you know, a week with us here. Yeah. And you were, I'm not your normal Proline customer, especially at that time. I was nobody's customer. So when you got here, you said, hey man, we need a Hall effect sensor. And I was like, I don't have the money for a Hall effect sensor. I'm not buying one. I'm not ordering one. Make this one work. And you were like, this sensor, it doesn't work. And I was like, well, make it work.
Mark's been through that before, Dahlquist, with my Hall. I could make a VR sensor work. We ended up making it work too. Needed some resistors and an oscilloscope.
We made all the sensors work that were on the car with a new system. And I mean, it was one of the best learning experiences ever. And it was one of those times where I actually, you know, felt like I learned more than what the product was worth. You know what I mean?
Cool. No, we tried to go through it all. That's how I do it, is just step by step. And really, I mean, my job for those guys, and I do this for a lot of other companies, was bring this thing from concept to working on some cars. You know, and they're going to follow me with 20 smarter guys and putting it on 500 cars. But the first 3 or 4, you just got to realize, I mean, you've met Keith Berry, right? I came from a month of him and then went straight to you. You were the second car to make passes with that ECU. And I know we told you we had it on some other engines, but they were all on the engine dyno. You know, I mean, Diller's a great marketer. Right. He's smooth. He knew it worked though. He did validate that it worked. I mean, he made us do a pretty solid program as far as project management and testing and validating.
So
everything.
let me get this right. Keith Berry had the very first FuelTech installed that made it down the racetrack.
Yep.
And Justin.
No, I thought it was Larson.
No, Larson was third. I went to his place right after you. Me. Nope. Larson went in August and September. Now, he had it on an engine that we were supposed to run on the dyno before you, but it got fucked up all summer long. And I'm looking at these pictures. I go straight from your shop straight to Kansas City. Literally did not even go home. So
yeah, I felt like for some reason I remember someone saying, hey, send us your file that runs and starts and drives and shit so we can put it in Keith Berry's car. So, but it may have been something that was.
It might have happened later too.
Yeah.
No, I remember for sure. And I'm sitting here going through all these pictures. I got you know, a month in Keith Berry's shop and then back and forth at Proline because he's about a half hour from them, and then straight to your place, you know, and it was just kind of funny. I mean, Dillard, you know, I told him, I'm like, all right, this thing works. It's validated. Can I go home? You know, or whatever. I know you guys just need to put this thing on like a piece of shit Ford Escort from the junkyard and somebody drive it around and you'll figure out any more bugs from there. And he's like, oh, no, I got something for you. I got one more. We got your car to put it on. Then it was you guys. It was hilarious. So, but yeah, I mean,
I was, Monkey was totally against it, by the way.
Oh, I know. No, he told
know.
me later. I talked to him. Yeah, I've kept more in touch with him, and I understood. He's like, why are you fucking with a good thing that's working? I got 59 other things in question on this car, you know, and I'm shit. Yeah, in retrospect, that was ballsy and naive of all of us, but
yeah,
it
but
worked.
man, but ever since then, I've been racing every weekend, and there's never been a good time to do anything. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you know, that was the only good time to learn the ECU and change everything, and it was it was wild for sure. It was a wild decision, but it paid off big time.
I think so. It's been good to see you guys do well. It's fun to watch you guys kind of do your own tuning too. I mean, you're dude, I'm just going to say it. You're stupid humble about this stuff, but you fucked around with OEM ECUs. We watched you. It's funny, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'm a street outlaw, I get paid to go around and make appearances. Bullshit, dude. I've seen you at 3 races in the last 6 months where you just showed up to go racing. And, you know, you brought Jackie's car, you brought a couple of cars, you had 3 or 4 cars, whatever, with different guys. But, you guys are just serious about the racing. You love it. It's in your blood, which is cool. The TV stuff hasn't perverted you badly yet. I don't know. It's not like Puck from MTV. You guys are still the same. I mean, I can call you anytime. And just whatever bullshit with you. It doesn't seem like you're out of touch to me. So maybe I'm missing things. But otherwise, it's fun to watch you guys just do the racing. But you've done chassis stuff. I mean, you've taken a chassis car and tried to make it work on crappy surfaces. Which, it's funny, I'm referring to the Crow mod, and nobody had really done that before you guys started doing that. And I remember Dillard even told me that. He's like, ooh, that might be hard to do. That might be really hard what they're trying to pull off with that, you know. You've taken all sorts of different builds. I've seen ladder bar cars, back half, different stuff, and made it work. You've had to learn some shit along the way. You don't really have to dump all that here. I'm more interested in the process. Is it just forcing yourself to have to just dive into this stuff and work like a maniac 900 hours a week? Is that how you become so well-rounded, or how do you get to where you're at as far as, you know, today you spec out a car and it'd be pretty close to right. What got you there? I mean, you tell us a little bit about your story from the beginning, because you were on tuning forums 5 or 6 years before the Street Outlaw stuff. I'm looking at historically here. So you
basically, I mean, I was a diehard carburetor guy, you know. And I was a nitrous guy, and it's really tough to be a nitrous guy because, you know, it's just everybody is against you and everybody laughs, and they're all just sitting around waiting on you to trip over your dick and launch the hood scoop over the beams, you know, and it's just, you know, there's so many bad things about being a nitrous guy, and you know, so it was tough to be a nitrous guy, especially with no money and a Pontiac engine and, you know, stuff like that. It just wasn't the best combination. So, you know, I started by just learning small things, and I remember I went to a race. I know it's stupid. It probably doesn't have anything to do with EFI tuning, but I went to a race in Tulsa and I saw Billy Glidden, and he was always a Mustang guy, and I never really liked Mustang guys. So, but I saw him there, and he had just the shittiest fucking parts and the worst looking pit, you know, and the car, it looked cool because it had this big Mickey Thompson wrap on it and stuff, you know, but it's like him and his chick, and dude, he's racing pro mod, you know what I mean? Like and I've been a pro mod fan since I knew what fucking steel body cars were with big tires, but
same here.
But he's racing pro mod, and he's got and I'm thinking, oh man, I drove all the way to Tulsa thinking I'm going to get to see some real pro mods here, and I'm going to see some stuff that I've never seen. Like, I want to see the crazy shocks that these guys got, because I was really into chassis and nitro stuff, and I want to see the carburetors, Braswell carburetors and shit. What kind of boosters are they running in their carburetors? I was like thinking about all this crazy shit, and I get there and he's got like a window unit on like a roll around cart that he's running the fucking tranny lines through, and he's got strange double adjustable coilovers in the rear. What kind of boosters are they running in their carburetors? I was like thinking about all this crazy shit, and I get there and he's got like a window unit. Hello?
Yeah, you're there. Sorry, go ahead. Had you echoing, my mistake.
But yeah, it just I see all this junk, and I stood there and I mean, after looking at everybody else's pit and seeing Penske electric shocks on everything, and like everybody's got just the baddest shit ever, and then you got this guy with just junk everywhere, and his helmet's like the fucking foam's falling out of it and shit, and I'm like, man, this is crazy, and it's just him and his chick, and they're like sliding fucking parts in the motor, and they're doing everything in between rounds, and they're not even working on workbenches, they're just like working on the ground, and they didn't even have like a pit matter. It was just terrible looking. And I'm not shitting on Billy Glidden by any means, but that right there shows
Look
me,
at that guy's record.
Hey, he went out that day and won the race at the record, whatever, and kicked everybody's ass. And I'm like, so what's different? Because everybody else has 5.3 bore space motors and shit, and he had a 5-inch bore motor. Like, he had 3-year-old heads, and I was like, man, this is just, what's the difference here? And I was talking to Jeff Nizer and a couple of his buddies, because I was a diehard nitrous guy. I was talking to some guys in Jeff Nizer's pit, and I was like just doing anything I could to see the block that the spark plugs were in. Being a nitrous guy, like I just wanted to see Jeff Nizer's spark plugs, because he was 5 kits or something. He had flames over the hood, and I was like trying to get over there to see him. And anyway, after talking to them, I said, man, what's the difference here? And they just told me flat out that Billy works harder. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. They're like, if you work harder and you just nonstop, relentless, like a gnat at a barbecue, they were like, eventually you'll figure it out with what you have and go faster than what you thought you could. And I was like, huh. So that kind of got me going on just trying to go fast. But then eventually I got put in the position where it was like, with a little Pontiac motor and no money, you're either sliding pistons in it every round and still not going fast, or you're going to put a big Pontiac or big Chevrolet motor or whatever in it. And I just couldn't bring myself to go to the big Chevrolet motor and put all that weight in the front of the car. So I had talked to a guy named Travis Quillen, who I didn't know it at the time. He was, an EFI guy, and he used to be a mechanical,
super badass fabricator and engineer too.
Yeah, and he used to be like a mechanical fuel injection guy, and then he's kind of, was going EFI and was doing a bunch of stuff. And I was talking to him, and I was like, man, I'm just done. Like, I'm gonna have to put a Chevrolet motor in the car. And he was like, no, you don't. He said, just get rid of nitrous. And I said, well, don't run without it. And he said, there's only, he's like a Pontiac motor is like a small block Ford. He's like, it's never gonna run with a shit on nitrous. But you put a turbo on it, and all of a sudden, it's full grown.
It'll wake up.
And I was like, yeah. So then I went through the stages of trying to figure out how to get turbos, and trying to figure out how to make a blow through carburetor work. And,
yes.
Oh God.
Did you ever get that working?
What?
Did you ever get that to work? Blow through carbs?
Not with the turbos. I mean, we did okay with the Pro Charger and methanol, but not the turbo deal. I just never did get to where. I mean, it was decent, but it wasn't like roll up there, idle, start, fucking stage like a boss, go in and then rip everybody's head off. It was a constant battle. So, eventually it got to the point where I was like thinking about putting solenoids on the carburetor to give it more fuel and like doing all this stuff. I'm like, and then Quillen was just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Put EFI on it.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you're going to get that crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, that's exactly what you're trying to do. So I, thankfully he knew some guys at Comp Cams, and the show deal was popping off, and I was doing anything I could to try and be competitive. And so the great people at Comp Cams were,
that's how you ended up with an XFI on the car then, and a distributor. I remember that. Okay. Cause that's the point where I showed up.
I had a shop, and I was like, hey, if we, if I can sell this many XFI systems or whatever, or the easy FI, you know, if I can start pushing everybody towards EFI and away from carburetors, will you give me a deal on the XFI? And, you know, they said, of course, you know, so they said, and so we sold a bunch of, you know, easy FI stuff, and we sold some XFI cars and set them up. But I had to make mine work first. And so I get this box in the mail, and it's like a million wires.
Yeah. So what was that like doing your first standalone? God, I didn't realize that was, holy crap, you are crazy, man. So carry on. What was that like, getting that running yourself? How much help did you have to lean on, and who helped you, if they did? I mean, I know David Page had to be involved, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. He was involved, especially with the hardware, you know, mounting the stuff, where to put it, and how to, you know, what sensors to use. And, you know, of course I didn't have any money, so I wanted to use the XFI to do everything. You know, I was like, man, I can't put a boost controller. I had what are those 2000 boost controllers or whatever? They all had those. Yeah. And I couldn't get one of those. So I was like, I got to make the fucking XFI do everything. And so with the help of Travis Quillen and David Page and a really, really smart local guy, believe it or not, he's probably one of the most underrated guys that I've ever met in the EFI world. But he owns a shop here called Able. His name's Andre Matine or Matine. I don't know how he pronounces it, but with the help of those guys, like, you know, they pretty much took it as a challenge to make it work. So we were using boost controller in the XFI, and then we were manipulating the EGR part of the XFI to do the second stage of the boost controller. And like, there was just so much that we were trying to do with one box. And to do that, you just learn, you figure out as you're doing it, how things work. And it's just, you know, it's basically a one giant hack, you know, and that's what Travis Quillen told me a long time ago, and it's stuck with me ever since, is, you know, he said it was something, and I'm not word for word guy, but he said EFI tuning is like, it's simply learning how to use the software to manipulate whatever ECU you have in order to achieve the desired mechanical response. So if you think of it like that, it's just figure out what things apps and MSECs and all that. He's like, man, you know, start with just figuring out how to turn things on and off. And so, you know, that's what I did. And then he said the actual job of a real tuner is knowing what mechanical response is the right one to attain the goal of the customer, whether that be ET or horsepower or drivability or whatever. And so at the time I was just trying to figure out how to turn things on and off with the XFI, and I burnt up so much stuff, not mechanical parts inside the motor, but like, I remember for some reason I'd turn the ignition on and it would just start zapping the ignition box, and it would zap the rotor till it melted a hole in the cap. And like so many things that I had wrong, not having the cam sync working, you know, and I'm trying to do all this. It was just a nightmare, man. I'd get to the race, the car wouldn't start, you know, and it wasn't the XFI's problem. It was just me not trusting anyone, you know, even Travis Quillen. Like, I would talk to Travis and say, hey, you know, this is what it's doing or whatever. How do I make it spool faster? And he would say, oh man, take some timing out of it. And I'm like, that's retarded. That makes no sense at all. Take the timing out. Why would that make the whole taking timing out? It's not going to do it. And so I'm just trying everything I could. I just didn't trust anyone. Literally didn't trust anyone, or anything they said, because, you know, I had been told so many wrong ways to do nitrous tuning for so long that I just didn't trust shit, you know. So you have to just learn the hard way, you know, and you go in there, and
a stubborn but practical way of making sure you validate whatever you're told by someone else. You're going to, I run into some people like that, and it's actually pretty cool because I see that and I'm like, he's going to figure shit out. It's going to be at his pace, and he maybe heard some stuff, but he's going to validate test everything. You're real good at ABA testing. You know, whether you realize it or not, it was kind of funny. You know, I mean, you were there making sure everything worked.
I went through, a 55-gallon drum of transmission fluid in like a week in my garage, in my shop behind my house, just trying to spool the car,
So,
and it was so hard.
Yeah, let me interrupt a sec. We actually had someone asking. We got a question from a guy on the podcast or on Mixlr. It says, "Is Justin using any special strategies to spool those large turbos with the small Pontiac motor? Timing retard or nitrous? It spools so quick on the show." What have you learned?
It's ridiculous. If you could see it in person, I mean, I'm so proud of that, of being able to stage the car like
instantly.
A man, is what I call it, and not having to bump
like
in or ask somebody to wait for me or whatever, or I don't have to say, hey, I need to go in first or whatever. Like just being able to stage the car is one of the things I'm proudest of. And it's definitely not an easy process, and what sucks is it's never the same. I could tell you everything I do to mine to get it to spool fast, and it may not do shit on somebody else's car, so it's but the best advice I could give anybody is that thing is a pinwheel. That turbo is a pinwheel, so you just need to blow that pinwheel
as hard as you can,
or shoot that pinwheel or pop that pinwheel, anything you could do to get that pinwheel up to speed, you know what I mean, and don't slow it down. So the way I do it is very complicated as far as the ECU goes, and I got to have 5 different tables to do it, but you can do it without it. It's just, the main thing is more timing than you would ever think that it would ever want,
right?
Until it gets above 1.5 or 2 pounds of boost, and then put it on a limiter. I don't care if it's, my foot brake limiter, the 3-step is like 3,900. So as soon as it hits that limiter, it's like a tame beat, it just goes limp. And then you can just start taking the timing out at a, pretty fast pace until it starts making all kinds of noise and, it sounds like the crankshaft's going to fall out of it. And then, then you can use the timing to cap it off. If it's, if you want to make 8 pounds, you just stop taking timing out or start putting timing in it, and it'll quit making more boost,
And you're not intercooled on methanol pretty much for everything nowadays, right?
For my race car stuff, yes. For my race car stuff, for sure. But
gotcha.
But when trying to spool a Pontiac 480-inch motor with the heads flow 340, I don't know if anybody understands what that means, but that's terrible.
It's not
a
huge.
Stock LS motor blows more than that.
Right.
So, and then I've got 98s on the car now, and dude, it spools instantly. But it's
awesome. I mean, it's also converter and cam too, right? Did you ever have to mess with cam? I know you got to mess with converter.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Converter and cam factor into that equation a little bit too, though. I mean, you got to have the right converter. How much work have you done figuring out the right converter for each combo?
Well, it's tough. To be honest, I feel like the converter doesn't matter as much if you can figure out that pinwheel. You know what I mean? I used to change stators at every race. I used to change a stator. I used to be able to change the stator in between rounds to try and, to figure it out. But I learned that I was chasing other issues with the converter, trying to band-aid tuning issues or part selection issues or whatever with the converter that I didn't need to. You know what I mean? So guys nowadays, they're extremely, lucky, and because they didn't go through that period where everything sucked and turbos were terrible. You know what I mean?
Right,
so, they don't know what it's like to take 10 minutes to spool, and fucking burn your shit up.
Yeah, nowadays you can almost call Jegs and be like, all right, here's what I want to do. Yeah.
We have another question for Justin from Keith Farron.
Go ahead.
He says, we know, quote unquote, that the Crow can make, quote unquote, 3,000 plus horsepower, but realistically, what power do you think the car is actually making when you're running your average trip down the street, like on one of your street races?
Well, okay, so that's a good question. That's the kind of shit I like to talk about anyway, is so on the show, when you watch like the number 1 and versus number 2 race, or me versus Dave or whatever, when you watch those races, that road is the same road that we race on, most of the time, and we don't have a lot of roads to switch from every weekend. So that road gets pretty good. It's bumpy, but it gets pretty good. Each lane has its advantages or whatever, but I can promise you, I feel like I have the fastest ET or pass ever been down that road. And, you know, it was 40 some pounds of boost within, you know, a second and a half. So my little motor at 40 pounds of boost, and usually at 40 pounds of boost, I run like 30 degrees of timing. So my little motor at 40 pounds and 30 degrees of timing, I mean, it should make 2,800. You know what I mean? It's been, I know that at that boost, it's been 186 in the big tire car, 188 in the big tire car, and it's been 190 in the small tire car. So
I could see 2,800 at the flywheel all day long with those numbers, something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
So what mile an hour are you rolling through on the show?
Well, okay, on the well, it's crazy because at the racetrack,
don't want to, by the way, the peanut gallery.
It's tough, man. At the racetrack, no, there's no secret to me. If I could have scoreboards on the street, I'd put them up. I don't ever do the no time crap. So, on the racetrack, if you can go 430s or 420s, then that's what it takes to be competitive on our normal street here in Oklahoma. Well, guys don't understand that a 430 at 180 is not going to be as fast on the street as a 430 at 160. So, because on the street, you only have 100 foot of decent road. So you can't go a 107 60 foot and then pour the coals to it out the back because there's just no surface there. You know what I mean? So on the street, and instead of trying to go 180 or whatever, I'm trying to go the fastest possible ET with the lowest possible mile an hour, which just seems weird. But if I can go
right? You're trying to go as fast as you can out of the gate.
Yeah, you basically got to run a 4.0 or a 390 to the 200 foot mark, and then you got to run a 480 or 5.0 out the back, and that somehow gets you to about a 430. So it's weird, but yeah, you need to run. In order to be really, really competitive and be at the top of the list, you need to be able to go 101 or 102 to the 60 foot. You need to be able to nail the flashlight, obviously, which is never easy because you don't have a pro tree or a staging bulb or anything that tells you when the green's about to come on. So you need to be able to nail the flashlight. You need to be able to go 102 to the 60 foot. You really need to be able to go 270-ish to the 330. Which is tough, especially with the road and the bumps and everything else. But then out the back, I don't feel like that road will take much more than 165 or 166 out the back mile an hour wise. Now, there are guys who say that they have tune-ups that are 170 mile an hour, but they're not as fast early. You know what I mean?
Tom Vigil, who's one of our participants usually, has asked, of the top 5 cars, how much do they weigh? How heavy are they? And he
Tom
says,
who?
Tom Vigil, 3V Performance, pro stock engine builder.
Pro stock
stuff.
Okay. He does a lot. He's worth answering if you can answer that.
Yeah,
says, I'll answer anything.
He says,
how heavy are they?
Yeah, how heavy are the top 5? And he says he's betting you that you dumped the rear shocks pretty early.
I don't have air shocks in the car. Never had air shocks in the car. I've tried them one time in California, and it tore a lot of stuff up on the car. So I don't have any air shocks. I don't have electric shocks. I don't use any transmission dumps or what are the traction control crap. I don't have drive shaft curves or dot plots or none of that in my car. I do
it all open loop. I love it.
All the hardest possible way. So, but as far as weight goes, on the starting line at the street, my car varies between 2,800 and 2,830. It can get as light as probably 2,680 or 2,700 at the racetrack. And it can get down to 2,600 on small tires, but with the big tires and the liners and all the heavy shit that the street requires, because you can't have any lightweight parts on the car on the street because it's just beats the fuck out of the car. It's so bumpy and tires shake every 3 passes. So everything has to be heavy. You can't have like carbon fiber wheelie bars or titanium parts anywhere. I don't even have a carbon fiber drive shaft on the car right now because everything just has to be fucking stout for the street, or you won't make but one pass and tear everything up. So as far as everybody else goes, I know Ryan is usually a little heavier than that. He can get light, but because of the configuration of his car and the size of his engine and where it is and stuff, I know that he's usually a little heavier than 2800, and then he's probably more 2850, 2900 on the street. These are just guesses, by the way. If Ryan calls in and kills me, whatever. But
we've had Jamie
Dave's
car on here a couple times, but not Ryan yet.
Yeah, Dave's car is about the same. 2750 to 2850. I know that he has to weigh a little more in some of the stuff that he races, but
right.
I think he can get down to 2850-ish. But yeah, most all the cars, honestly, it's really hard to get lighter than 2750 with these parts. You know what I mean? Like it's just really tough. Even in the Pro Mod, my Pro Mod was 2750 on the street. You know what I mean? It's just everything weighs something, and you got two chutes. You can't, I can't run carbon brakes because I use the brakes to stage the car. So the carbon brakes won't hold the car on the starting line. So
wow.
I've got, 4 calipers in the rear, and, and I've got big calipers everywhere because you got to be able to, there's not much shutdown room. And, I run 2 chutes because there's not much shutdown room, and the car's always sideways through the finish line.
And it's got to work.
There's never a pass where you can get away with not running the chutes, in my opinion. And then, running the 16-inch wheel or 7, some of us even have 18-inch wide wheels made, and liners and heavy tires and wheelie bars. Dude, it's just all so fucking heavy.
Interesting.
So given
Anastasia.
Hey, Mark, for a second, there's a related question here from Brian Gadecki on YouTube, and it kind of ties into this. So Justin, your road, you guys know it. You said it works pretty well, especially the first 100 feet. What happens when you travel? And the related question was, how do you measure drive shaft speed on a big tire? Are you looking at that? Are you working that along with the wheelie bars, or what are you willing to talk about in terms of how you tune when you go to a different place?
Well, I love going to other places and other roads and challenges, and, and plus our road is pretty good. So you can come off the racetrack with a decent car and, that you have tune-ups for, and, you can say, oh, it looks like these guys are, running 430s at 165 or 166, and you can put something in it that'll go down. And that sucks for a guy like me because, I've made 1,000 laps on that road, and, but the road's so good that anybody could come in and run those numbers. You know what I mean? So when you go out of town or when you go to other roads, that is where I just love it. I shine, because you get on blacktop or a different type of road or different surface or not very much rubber down or whatever. And then you have to know what changes to make. And unfortunately, I'm not very good with the drive shaft sensor. So every time I hook the drive shaft sensor up, I slow the fucking car down. So Jackie, my girlfriend, she hates the drive shaft sensor. And because, every time I hook it up, I'm like, I watch it and I think, oh, hey, look, it was moving a little bit right here. So I need to take a little timing out right here, put a little fuel in it right here to slow it down. And I do that 3 or 4 times until I get the perfect looking drive shaft sensor, drive shaft curve. And then we go to the racetrack and it goes 460. Changes.
Yeah.
And so, but you put it back the way it was and it'll run 410s or 420s, but the drive shaft looks like shit. So the best thing that we can do on the shittier roads or different roads or whatever, if they don't have as much bite early, is you got to use what you can, which is tires. Different tires are a big deal. The liners, the tubes, the bead locks. Bead locks obviously have the most grip. You can put a set of bead locks on the car with no tube, put a set of deltas on the car, 16x16 deltas, and they have the most grip early. So if the road is shitty, you can put a set of deltas on. If the road's really good, then you need a liner or something to keep it from shaking. So, different tires help. The Hoosier works better on shit roads. The, Mickey works better on good roads. It's all, there's so many things you can do, but I rarely ever make a four link change. I rarely ever make a converter change or anything like that. It's all just
that's interesting.
Shocks, wheelie. The biggest thing is wheelie bars, because you get those fucking things out of the way and the car will go, but if the road's really good, you got to lower them.
Yeah.
You're a chassis tuner, wheelie bar tuner, along with doing the tuning on the ECU. So you're doing the whole works on this. How much testing do you guys get when you go to California or you go to wherever? How much testing do you guys get to do on those roads before, the show gets shot?
Honestly, it's up to us, basically. So usually when we go out of town, if the place that we're going, if they street race there on a regular basis and the guys that we're racing are street, then I usually will vote no testing for us or them beforehand, because it's an open road and the guys that want to hit it can hit it, and the guys that don't, can wait or whatever. But sometimes I get outvoted on that. There's a lot of guys on the show, you know what I mean? So it basically boils down to what we want to do. The TV show people will let us pretty much do whatever. They're really good about that. They'll tell us, hey, do you guys want to test? And 99.9% of the time, I'm no. I don't want to test. I don't want them to test. I don't want anybody to test, as far as like shutting the road down or whatever. If I can, I would much rather show up, unload off the trailer, and race whoever they got for the most amount of money down their road, because I always feel like I have the advantage. You know what I mean? As far as the ECU goes on a shitty road, I know that I talk a lot about chassis and tune and stuff, car and stuff, but as far as the ECU goes, the best thing that you can do is starting line RPM. That's what I tell guys. As soon as we show up somewhere, I'll be like, okay, take 200 out of everybody's fucking launch RPM.
Yeah.
Like right now, just take 200 out of it. Don't touch the boost controller because it'll help, but take 200 out of it. Or I'll say, take 400 out, or, whatever. And then don't put nothing on the gates. Just run it on the spring and short shift the fuck out of it. Like, those are the main things that I do, from a track run to a street run. And the shittier the road gets, the earlier I shift the 1-2, and to the point where sometimes I'll shift the 1-2 at fucking 4 or 5 foot out. And, the starting line RPM is the biggest deal. Like when we went to Topeka for that no prep race, it was on just like literally Walmart parking lot blacktop. And it was, oh man, I was not happy at first, but then once I made a pass, I was pumped.
Yeah.
So you're helping the guys on the rest of the, I'm going to use the word team here for want of a better word, but you're helping the rest of the guys team get a feel for, you're all standing there looking at the same piece of asphalt or the same piece of concrete and trying to make decisions, but you're helping make the call for people by calling out that drop to launch RPM, short shifted, do those sort of things. So there is some quarterbacking, if I can use a mixed metaphor here, to get everybody to be successful. Anybody that doesn't listen to you?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of guys that do well by not listening to me. You know what I mean? But the way I feel, and I feel like everybody should play on their strong suits. So in order to win as a team, there are some guys that are better at things than others, and Ryan is really good at the drive shaft stuff, and he knows the traction control really well, and he can help guys with that stuff a bunch. And he's learned so much in the last couple of years that he's getting really good at the whole car. But I just feel like I can judge a road. I can read a road better than just about anybody I know. And it's only because I've made passes on everything possible nonstop. Like, I'm the guy who, if we're going to a race, I'll prepare for every road possible, and I'll make 3 hits on every different type of surface and try and figure it out, and then go there and, we'll end up on some really good road or something, and it was a waste of time. But it helps me to learn how, what those initial things are to get the first 10 foot of the race figured out. And so,
Right.
a lot of the guys will listen, and then, there's some guys that don't listen. And, but when we're out of town, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I sneezed and it sounded like I said Doc, but I.
No, Doc listens. It's just he doesn't know what to do. Like, even if you tell him, you say, "Hey, man, take the launch RPM down 200," he'll go, "Oh, hell yeah!" And then he'll go over to his computer and stare at it for an hour, and then go, "I don't know what that means," and then go out there anyway. So
God bless that guy.
I'm sorry, but I just watch and observe, and sometimes.
But Doc usually does well out of town, and he can go down. Believe it or not, he used to be really good at going down any road, So, but man, when we go out of town, everybody works as a team, and if Ryan makes a hit before I do, I'll go ask Ryan, "Hey, man, how sporty is the road? How bad is it? As bad as it looks? Is it better? Or whatever." And usually, we feed off of each other when we're racing out of town and when we're racing against other teams. But, but there's some guys that you just can't help, you know what I mean? And there's some guys that if you told them what to do to their car, it would just fuck their car up because their car is totally different, I'm
glad you say that, man, because I see that. God, what works for one guy, everybody's like, well, okay, what's he doing? What's his setup? And we try to duplicate that, and then this shit doesn't work. And then we just start changing something that you wouldn't think. And all of a sudden things start coming around. Hence the statement we always say, but this is a Shane T thing, but give it what it wants and develop a theory later, So I just wanted to point out that Justin's talking about testing and just getting experience. So and just starting off, it doesn't matter if you think you're just dumb as hell or not, just go out and get experience doing whatever you're doing. Be safe at it, obviously, but just get experience, whether that's tuning. I mean, for me, that was tuning street cars and imports and whatever came along. When I first started off just on the local street scene up here in fucking Omaha, Nebraska, so you got to get as much experience as you can.
Shane hit the nail on the head there. He said, just give it what it wants, you know what I mean? And that's really all you can do. Like, just to give you an instance, 2 seasons ago, there's a guy on our show named Shane, and he was having some trouble, and he was racing a guy that, we didn't really want around or whatever. And so we were trying to help him. And I remember like Sean and Monkey, lining him up and trying to help him. And Shane told Monkey what he sets his wheelie bars at. And Monkey's like, "That's fucking backwards." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, but the crown in the road in this lane is different than the crown on that lane. So I set them opposite." And Monkey's like, "What the fuck? That doesn't even make any sense, And so Shane's like, "Well, hey man, do whatever you want because I haven't made a pass that's worth a shit. So maybe it's that. Maybe that's the problem." And so, Monkey put the wheelie bars at what he thought they needed to be, and Shane crashed the car. And we watched the video, and it's because of the wheelie bars. And honestly, his car just, his car, the way it was set up and the way he was running it, it just needed the wheelie bar set opposite from everybody else's. So, that's why I try not to ever just go over and tell somebody, "Oh man, that's nowhere near enough timing. I run 30 degrees of timing at 50 pounds of boost. You're at 18. What the hell's wrong with you?" Because what they do is not, they may not have their fuel at 10 degrees like I do, or 8 degrees like I do. And they may not have, 10% nitro or whatever. Like They may be running fucking paint thinner in their fuel. Who fucking knows? So,
right.
They might not have the combustion chamber from hell.
Right. That's why that thing will tolerate 30 degrees at 50 pounds of boost.
I'm getting yelled at by Anastasia.
Yeah.
Animal.
Hashinsky,
my favorite,
Jake and Anastasia.
My favorite tuner that I've never met. She wants to know, do you feel that you benefit more on the what do you benefit more from on the street? Boost versus time or boost versus speed?
Or do you ramp it in with a boost, or do you use timing to ramp it in? I think we'll add to that.
What do you mean? What's boost versus speed? What the fuck does that mean?
Well, you can use front wheel speed, and you can have your boost ramp up by front wheel speed. Okay, at 100 miles an hour, my boost is all in. I think she's talking about that.
Oh, no. Yeah, okay.
You don't do any of that.
I think I'm running the car a little different than what most people can run their cars or whatever, but I don't ramp the boost or anything. You know what I mean?
I told you, animal.
There's no ramping. There's no ramping of boost. There's no speed sensors. There's none of that. Everything that I do is by time, because I know where I know where the transitions are and where I can look at a road and go, okay, it's got a decent surface for 60 foot. Okay, well, I need to shift the car at 40 foot versus 60 foot. So if it, usually if on this surface, if I think it'll go 280 on the G meter, then that's going to put me 40 foot out in 0.6 or whatever. So I need the car to shift before then, or else I'm going to be shifting on marbles and it's going to shake the tire. So everything that I do is time versus distance. Nothing is speed based. And I guess you could equate that to speed somehow, but in my experience, I'm going to be going a different speed at 4/10 out on every pass. So it wouldn't do me much good.
It wouldn't be consistent. Yep.
So you are truly racing the surface and or the track or whatever you want to call it, because you're optimizing what your car can do in its performance envelope against how it's going to be able to lay that down. You got 60 feet of good rubber, you got 100 feet, you got whatever. And
you're basically just trying the whole thing is trying to figure out time over distance. So I'm just trying to figure out how far out in the road I'm going to be at this certain time. You know what I mean? So everything that I have is time based. I don't have a boost ramp, like I've got, I usually try and leave about 13, 14 pounds of boost and like 4,600 RPM. And I try to have whatever my maximum boost number that I think the road will take or whatever. I really don't like to fuck with the boost controller, because once you get a boost curve that works and does what you tell it, you just need to stick with it, because you try and change that and it's going to be up and down and it's going to be trying to catch itself and it's going to be, over the curve and under the curve, and it's just never going to be right. So I try and have everything in under a second and use the car and the transmission ratios and everything else to get down the street. So basically, if I'm 40 pounds of boost and I'm leaving at 14, I want it to be at 40 by at the very maximum 1.2 or 1.3. You know what I mean? But I don't change the boost curve. I just change the ratios. You know what I mean? So, and the RPM, basically, everything's just done by time.
If you pull second gear 5 feet into it, it's not gonna hit your boost target as quickly.
Actually, what's weird is it'll hit it quicker, because converter, when you go into the next ratio, the converter just gets super sloppy and it goes straight up in the air and it just lays there. So the boost it comes in instantly because you're 8,800. You know what I mean? So there's no
you hit target RPM
ramp
right away. Yep.
So it's just, it's tough, because with my motor, 9,000 RPM will make more boost than 6,000 RPM. So if I try to do anything by speed or RPM, then it'll just always be behind. Everything that I do is time based, so the shifting is time based. The boost is very short time based, but I'm always flat on the boost controller from 1.5 out. It's always flat, just because you never want to be added. You want to keep that wrinkle in that tire. The goal is to keep that wrinkle the same all the way to the finish line.
Got it.
And the only way to keep that wrinkle the same is to not fuck with it. You know what I mean? So if you try and add 5 pounds of boost at some point in the run by like grabbing a panic button or anything like that, you're going to accelerate the wrinkle, or you're going to get rid of the wrinkle, and then that's when it'll shake.
Got it. So
dumb question: are you running a 2-speed or a 3-speed?
I'm sorry, say it again.
You running a 2-speed transmission or a 3-speed transmission?
I run a 3-speed. I would run a 4-speed if I could get one on my, get one that doesn't have a clutch, because I'm not a man yet. But I run a 3-speed. And
have you ever experimented with the gear vendors tucked in the backside of that 3-speed? Just out of curiosity.
Well, no. If I could get a 4-speed, the place that I would put the 4th gear would be way before the gear vendors. I'm 1-to-1 is 1-to-1 for me. but I need more ratios to choose from early. You know what I mean? So if I could have if I could have closer ratios early and have more of them, then that would help me get down the road more than anything, because that wrinkle in the tire, that shift, when you shift the car, that wrinkle sees it, it feels it, it knows it. So if you're making big drastic shit, like if you have a 2-speed and so you got a big drastic drop between the one, the first gear and the high gear, that wrinkle sees it, and you can't place that shift where you want in the street. If there's a bump at 300 foot and then another bump at 500 foot, you're just stuck with where you're shifting. Whereas if you have more ratios, you can shift before and after. You know what I mean?
So hypothetically, if you had a 210 first gear or T400, if you could put something in between that 210 first and that one, I forget, 30 something second, that might be helpful.
That would be extremely helpful, but the rear gear with the 210 would be tough. Like
you should look into using the gear vendor overdrive controlled by the ECU as a gear splitter. I've done it and it works great as that.
I don't know if it's fast enough.
Yeah,
for what
you
they're
get
doing.
the upgrade and they hold it works awesome for that. It's because you could start off with the split already on for first gear to lower that ratio, and then click it off as you're shifting. You just got to work on the timing of it to get it to where it's pretty seamless, but it'll click off and shift and you be in high gear and have a really small split.
Which to use it work. Some of the drag week guys are doing that.
Yeah.
I haven't played with that in here. I haven't actually had the chance to get my hands on the gear vendors, and I've always been kind of afraid of anything, any more things to break.
Right.
So, I've never really experimented.
What's that? The challenge.
I said it's always a reasonable concern because you don't want to lose a round because rounds are a big deal.
A couple of guys are asking, what percentages do you run, Justin? Front percentage, rear percentage, instant center. What kind of instant center? How much anti-squat do you run?
Can you talk about
curious about that?
I don't know.
He runs what makes it happen.
I can tell you that I've learned the hard way that you can't change, and people are going to argue with you, and they're going to say I'm full of shit. But
nope, go ahead, man.
You can't change that stuff. You just can't change it. You're stuck with it. So how the car was built and at what angle the engine and transmission was installed in the car at ride height, you can't change that, because if you go fucking with that, then the drive shaft becomes you end up having two angles. You have the first angle of the drive shaft at the transmission, and then you have another angle at the rear end, and those angles fight against each other. So
yeah,
you need the engine, the crankshaft all the way to the pinion has to be straight. All the way to the rear end has to be straight, and then the rear end, you put a half a degree or 3/4 of a degree, depending on the car. Some cars need 1.5 degrees to because their chassis sucks like mine, but
right.
You put some negative in it, but you can't have an angle at the transmission, so you can't really fuck with the 4-link and the ride height and instant center and all that stuff, because there's only one that works. You know what I mean? And so now the only thing that you can do is you can if you want it to get back to ride height quicker, so basically Rick Jones told me this. It was the easiest thing ever. I've tried to learn all the computer programs. I've read the Jerry Bickle book like a Bible every day for 7 years straight, and the only thing that ever made any sense to me was Rick Jones told me the bottom bar in a 4-link is what the car does. So if the bottom bar is pointing down, then when that rear end twists, it's going to push the car down and squat on top of the tire. If the bottom bar is pointing up, then it's going to push the car up and separate. And, basically, if that's how you do everything, that tire, the best thing that I do have on the car that works, that actually does work, would be if you could somehow measure the sidewall height or ride height in the rear, you know what I mean? because the tire needs a certain sidewall height and it's happy there. If you wrinkle it more, then the sidewall height gets shorter, the wheel gets closer to the ground, and the tire will shake. If you get rid of some of the wrinkle, then the sidewall height grows and it'll start to spin and
Blow
shake.
the tire off.
So
Yeah.
So everything just, it depends on how fast you want to get it back to ride height, or what you would consider ride height, static, sitting on the starting line. And then if the tire will even take it, like, on a really good racetrack, you can put the lower bar at, point, half a degree up or whatever, and it'll squat, and then it'll try and get back to ride height. The more power you put to it and the harder it's hooked. But then once it gets back to ride height, then the tire comes off. So because then you're back to static, you got no leverage on the tire. If the track's really, really good, then the tire will stay there. But so the only thing that I do is, I work the front spread and the rear spread that works for the wheelbase or whatever. And then, my wheelbase is like 111 and a half or something. So, if the car is, let's say if the car's 50-50 or whatever, my car right now, I think it's like 51 on the rear right now. And I've worked my ass off to get it there, and it didn't seem to help any, but,
I love this. It's so fun. It's honest, man. This is good. Don't feel like you're getting way out there, and don't worry, nobody's going to get on and shit talk. In fact, here's a feedback I'm getting. He made that really easy to understand. Some of the guys from one of the guys at 417 Motorsports just said that.
I mean, the best, like Chris Bell is my shock guy, and I consider him one of my closest friends in the world. And he's out of the Cuba, Missouri area, and he owns Kinetic Shocks, and he has had to teach me how to do all this stuff, and none of his terms made sense to me. He'd say, put more bite in the car. I said, how the fuck do I do that?
Right. What does that even mean?
And he'd say, oh, you need to take some bite out of the car, at 100 or 200 foot out. It's just crushing the tire and shaking the tire. That's why it's shaking the tire. Or you need to put more power in it, or whatever. And I didn't know what the terms meant, so I had to literally figure it out, how to talk to him, the language, so that I would understand. And the best way I could do it was to get rid of the computer programs and get rid of all the other shit, and just say, okay, front spread, determines down track, and rear spread determines off the brake. So, and then bottom bar angle is everything else.
For some of the people that are listening that might not have this language in their heads, define what you mean when you say front spread and rear spread.
Yeah. So if you have a 4-link, you have 4 bars, and then the front, or towards the front of the car where they attach to the chassis, you have the upper bar mounting point and the lower bar mounting point. The measurement between those 2 bolts is what I call front spread. And you have the same thing on the housing, the rear end housing. You have a top 4-link bar and a bottom 4-link bar, and you have a distance between those 2 bolts, and that's called rear spread. And so, the hardest thing for me to learn was that the instant center is just a number, of what those spreads do. So you could say, I want my instant center at 58 and 8, 58 inches out and 8 inches off the ground. And it fucking could never work, right. But you could take those bars and you could make it 58 and 8, 10 different ways with those bars, and none of them are going to run the same down the racetrack. So the best thing to do is just use the spreads and know what the spreads do. So, if you want it to have more hook longer or carry the tires out longer on the track, then, you want more front spread. If you want it to hit the tire really hard early, you need more rear spread, and that's just the reaction of the rear end twisting in the car. The spread in the rear towards the tire is the biggest change early, instantly off the button. So, and then the spread in the front, that's what is pulling and pushing on the car as you go down the racetrack. So, if you work those spreads, and I think right now my car's at like 7 or 7 1/4 on the front spread, and it's probably 11.6 or 8 on the rear spread. And then bottom bar angle is like pretty much flat, or maybe 0.2 or 3 up. and then the rear mounting point is what determines everything on the lower bar. So with a 36-inch tire, I usually try and keep the lower bar mounting point on the rear end part. I usually try and keep it around 9 inches. I mean, just with the 36. You go to a 34.5, then it needs obviously it needs a little different. It needs to be raised or lowered according to the tire. And the distance between the wheel and the ground is everything. You know what I mean? That's what I've learned. So,
and this all comes from your experience of making 1,000 hits on the road there in OKC and knowing what the difference between those two tire heights are. You made a comment a little while ago about wheelie bar height and getting them out of the way. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about how you want to tune for wheelie bar and what that does, given everything else?
Wheelie bar is everything early. So they're not, it's a misconception. And when I had ladder bars and Moroso trick springs in the front, and it did wheelies for 200 foot, and it was slow, but it did a lot of cool looking stuff. But we only used the wheelie bars to keep it from flipping over. You know what I mean? And then as we tried to go faster, that didn't work. So that's another thing that Chris Bell did when he started working with me and mentoring me is, first thing he said is, it's not a fucking wheelie bar, because I was like, man, the front end's just not up high enough. We need to raise the wheelie bars. And he's like, that's not what the wheelie bars are there for, dude. And I'm like, what? And he said, the wheelie bar is only there to keep the distance between the wheel and the ground. Whatever that distance is that tire wants with your car, that's what the wheelie bar is for. If you were to smash that fucking tire, so like say you got a 36-inch tire, you set the wheelie bars at like 6.5 or 7 inches off the ground at the back, depending on how long they are. Basically, all the wheelie bar is there for is to keep the wheel from getting too close to the ground, because you get that wheel too close to the ground, then the tire distorts and it cups real bad in the center, and then it rolls over itself and shakes. So the wheelie bar is literally only there to help keep the tire from going flat, and you can use it up and down a little bit to get more wheel speed. So if the track's really, really good, it'll wrap the tire up really hard. And what people don't understand is it has to unwrap at some point. Like it can't stay that wrapped for that long. So when it unwraps, that's why you'll have a car that'll leave right off the button. It'll go 5 or 10 foot really good, and then it'll spin the tire all the way to the finish line. And that's people, they try and take power out of it, and it's not power. It's just the tire gets so wrapped up, it has to come back. So the wheelie bar keeps it from wrapping that far. If you try to turn that wheel inside that tire with the tire hooked to the ground, glued to the world, if you try and turn that wheel with a fucking torque wrench, you're going to turn that wheel a half a rotation. The tire is going to wrinkle up, and the wheel is going to get closer and closer to the ground. That's just the way it works.
There's a lot of energy in that tire.
So you have to have the wheelie bar hit before that happens, so that the wheelie bar actually stops the tire and wheel from smashing, and it allows that tire to slip. Just that one little slip is usually enough to keep the tire happy. So, if you can, basically we've always looked for the wheelie bars to slap. As soon as you come off the button, they come down, they slap, they let the tire slip once, and then it comes off the wheelie bars, the tire's happy. And then as it starts compressing the car and rolling out there harder, then it'll touch the wheelie bar to keep the tire happy for another 4 or 5 foot. And then you want to be off of them for the rest of the run. So the wheelie bar is literally the only thing that the wheelie bar is there for, or the only thing the wheelie bar actually does, is it keeps that distance between the wheel and the ground that the tire is happy.
Man, that's a killer way of thinking about it, though. It makes sense to me.
It's really hard because, earlier, in a few years ago, when I first started talking with Chris Bell, he would say, you need to lower the wheelie bar because, it's hooked up way too hard early. And I'm like, what the fuck's lowering the wheelie bar gonna do? And
right.
And he's like, I said, it's working fine for 10 foot, and then it shakes the tire. So it's not even on the wheelie bar when it shakes the tire. And he's like, yeah, but it all happens before that, you know? And he said, so if you piss it off 10 foot before that, then that's where the problem is. If you keep trying to fix it at the 10-foot mark where it's fucking up, you're never going to find it. And he was right, you know? So everything with the wheelie bar is just keeping that distance between the wheel and the ground. And each tire has a certain distance on your car that it likes. And the only way to manipulate that distance is with wrinkle. So if you can keep the same wrinkle that's happy in the tire all the way to the finish line, you can go the fastest possible pass on that road. You can make it every time. But you start fucking with that wrinkle, you start fucking with that distance, and then you start pissing that tire off.
Right.
And even small tires, it may not shake as hard, but it's going to spin, or it's going to cup in the center and spin, or it'll have too much wheel speed, you know, or it'll basketball and then come back up and spin. You know, it's all relative to whatever tire you got, except a drag radial, because they're easy as fuck. They're already round. If it doesn't hook in 10 foot, you're fucked anyway.
Right.
I hope y'all appreciate what a clinic this is.
I know. I mean, are you seeing the messages? Most of the messages are like, can you please thank him profusely for this info? It is so valuable. I can't buy this anywhere. So thanks, Justin.
I feel like an idiot because I'm on an EFI tuning podcast and I'm not talking about EFI tuning.
Yeah,
but
it's all right. We got that covered.
You don't use wheel speed sensors and you don't use drive shaft sensors. Are you using slow motion video to watch your tire sidewall?
Accelerometer?
Oh, video. Yeah. Video and G-meter video and, you know, ride height and shock travel sensors, you know, those are usually everything. But the best possible thing you can do is just look at the tire, look at the marks on the ground, you know, look at the wheelie bar chalk, and then, you know, video. You know, I have video of every run I've made since Jackie came on board a couple of years ago, and she's really good about getting the video with the wheelie bars in the video. And, you know, and that video, it helps a lot because you can see things happen. And a lot of times we can't use slow-mo because the lighting is so bad, but even in regular speed, you can see and hear things happening that you don't see in the data. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff in the data that looks goofy but works really well. There's a lot of stuff in the data that, you know, looks good but doesn't work. So you can hear more in the video than you can what the data will tell you. So you could hear the tire wad, or you could hear the, you know, the car bouncing, you know, early. Or if you hear that, like, you'll hear my car on some of the videos, even on the show, you can hear it going out the back door, and it's that's when it's fucking fast as shit.
Really?
You know what I mean? And that's because it's trying to hook and it can't. You know what I mean? And that's when my, you know, the big tire cars are really fast. Is you can hear that thing just, I mean, literally ripping up fucking earth as it's going
digging
down
hard.
There, you know? Yep. And my drive shaft will look like total shit too.
Seen it.
But if I, you know,
it looks like a sine wave. That can't be right. Right.
Yeah. When I tried the traction control stuff, you know, all it did was slow me down every pass. And I'm like, what is the deal? Like, I've got a fucking 430 drive shaft curve in it, and it's keeping it on a 430, but I know I'm not running 430. Like, that drive shaft went 430 at the track. How is it not going 430 right now? And it's
because of what the tire's doing.
Yeah, because I would, like, you'll see my car, it'll black track all the way to the finish line, like on the street, you know, I mean, literally black marks all the way to the fucking finish line. And it sounds like it's spinning the fuck out of the tires, but man, a big tire car on fire, you know, big tire car, but what I call on fire is a lot of wheel speed. A big tire car spinning the tires is a lot faster than trying to hold it to one perfect looking drive shaft that you're not going to get on a road that has a expansion joint every 14 or 15 foot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it needs to look like a data log at Bristol.
I hope everybody understands that this is tuning for, sorry guys,
crappy.
This is tuning for the surface that you're on, as opposed to tuning to some other set of parameters that don't mean shit in this case.
Yep.
And yeah, but dude, I've learned them, you know, and it all goes to the track too. I mean, everything that you do at the track, you know, if you're good at it, you can figure it out on the street too, or everything you do at the street, you can figure it out at the track. The hardest thing is just keeping the tire, not having to abort a pass. That's the hardest thing. If you can run it all the way to the finish line, you have a better chance of winning on any surface. And with that big of a tire and, all the different things you got to deal with, bumps and jumps and expansion joints and good rubber or bad rubber, it's the same thing when you go to a good track or a bad track. You go to Bristol and it's got a bump
Bristol.
in, the right lane and a dip in the left lane.
Yeah.
It's all relative, you know what I mean? So you can use it everywhere, but as long as you know that wherever you're at, whatever surface you're on, you got to keep that tire that wheel a certain distance from the ground, then you can be fast, and in order to do that, you're going to have to, every time you shift the car or change ratios or whatever, every time you fuck with it at all, the tire sees it. So you don't want to do it at the same time that there's something weird on the racetrack, or on the street or whatever. So, that's the hardest part about it, but that's also why I feel like I can go fast with a lot less than most people, is because I don't rely so heavily on the tuning side of the ECU or all the features that are in it. I rely more on what I see and what I can do with the tire and the chassis and stuff like that,
Very good.
Results speak for themselves.
Yes, sir. That's cool. Man, I should read you some of the feedback. I thought we were going to get more questions, but instead I'm getting all this. You need to have it. What do you say? I vote that he needs to come back on another show or 5. Another guy, this has absolutely made my day. Oh, dude, I'll tell you what. If you know what, help us get Chris Bell on here. That would be a cool show. I'd like to get him on here at some point in time.
I don't know, man.
I know he's quiet
like this because, Chris is so smart that, and he's so bad at compliments, So like, if I try and tell him, man, you're the best at this in the whole world, he's like, shut up. You're making me feel like a sissy. I'm like, what? And I'm like, dude, you're literally the best fucking chassis tuner, whatever you want to call it, that I've ever met ever. You can make anything go. And he's like, I'm not talking to you for 3 days. Like he's really tough on himself.
Right.
And he never wants to like actually say anything about, because he's always worried that somebody's going to go try it and think he's an idiot, so he's always well, yeah, that could work, or this could work, and that's why he's been so great for me, is he's told me a million times, man, hey man, whatever helps you relate to what the material that we're doing or whatever helps you get it, then I'm all for it. So it's funny because me and him always relate to the car as the bar stool. So you got a bar stool and it's got 4 legs, and in order to make, and you've got one leg in the back a little shorter than the other, and that's basically what we would call negative preload or whatever,
Sure.
Usually you either put preload in it or you put negative preload in it. Well, that shortens one of the, legs of the bar stool. So, when you leave the starting line, you need it to get back on that short leg and sit there perfectly until your beer is empty. And if it rocks forward or backwards at all, then you're going to spill your beer or you're going to fall down. So that's so like I tell Chris all the time, like, watch this video, dude. It's on the bar stool by 0.9 and it stayed there the whole way, and so he knows what I'm talking about. But,
sure.
Anybody else, they have their own terms and stuff for things. And Chris is so smart that it's hard to talk to him most of the time without him going, yeah, that'll work. Or what? Are you stupid? That's ridiculous. Like,
right. No, that's fucking hilarious, man. We all develop our methods or our way of just kind of classifying what's going on. This story he's telling is a lot like what I've seen in other camps too. So the cool shit.
And the best thing that you can do is, like, Sean, believe it or not, Sean, my business partner and my best friend here in the shop, Sean's one of the best chassis guys I've ever met, and he knows nothing about it. Like, literally nothing.
Yeah.
He knows absolutely nothing about it, but the dude is not scared of it because he doesn't know anything about it or what it does. So he'll make a bar change, and then he'll make another bar change before he ever makes a pass. Like, he's not scared of slinging 4-link bars in his race car, and he'll do it nonstop until it does what he wants it to do. And I'll ask him, people ask him all the time, what's the instant center? Are you moving it out? Are you moving it back? What's it doing? And Sean will say, I don't know. It's just not happy. And he just keeps moving the fucking bars around until it is happy. And that's how, that's how you learn. That's how you become better at it, is, just slinging shit and moving it until it's happy and making passes. And yeah, you're going to look like an idiot. You're going to go somewhere and it's going to go hard right 30 times in a row before it goes straight. But you're going to know how to make it go straight no matter what, because you fought with it the whole time, rather than have somebody take it to somebody, have them scale it, align it, take it to the track, and still don't go straight. And, you take it back and they rescale and align it until it goes straight. You have no fucking idea what made the car go straight. You know what I mean? Whereas, and I'm so scared of 4-link bars because they're like voodoo to me. And Sean fucking gives no shits about 4-link bars. He will, dude, I've seen him take them, and I've seen him put different links in the top and the bottom. I've seen him fucking put them in different holes. I've seen him put rear steer in cars, take rear steer out of cars. I've seen him do everything you can imagine with a set of 4-link bars and not give a damn either way.
So it's good not to be paranoid.
Not giving the car what it wants. Is that what that is?
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah. It's just give it. Yeah. It's just keep, and that's like why I don't consider myself an EFI tuner, or I shouldn't be held amongst the ranks of other EFI tuners, because honestly, if you looked in my EFI, everything looks like light switches, like
sure.
It's, nothing is what they call dynamic, or nothing is the way it should be, because I just kept flipping switches on and off until it went. And then, okay, cool. And then every once in a while you'll find out that, oh, there's a weird part of this whole thing that I've never been in before. And now I'm there and the switch wasn't on. So, eventually you end up with something that looks halfway decent, but still isn't probably the, correct way to do it. But it's the way that worked for us, or the way it worked for me. So just keep fucking changing shit and don't be afraid to look like an idiot. Like, Jeff Lutt's a good friend of mine and amazing fabricator, and he'll tell you right now he is the worst at EFI tuning, but he tunes it himself, and all he says to me every time is, we'll look stupid as soon as we get there, we'll get it out of the way early, whereas everybody else, they want to make their first nice easy lick and go straight and go down through there and then start turning it up. And Jeff's one of the guys who told me right away, like, let's get the looking stupid out of the way first. So anything you want to try or anything you're not sure about, let's do it as soon as we get there, and everybody can get their laughing out of the way. And then by the final, they'll be loading up and we're still racing.
Was there anything special you had to do to develop a thick skin, to knowing that you're on a world stage and that there's all these kick-ass top world tuners and all these, whether it's funny, actual experts, I don't know how many, but there's a shitload that think they're experts and who are saying, guy's an idiot, they don't know what they're doing. What do you do to just, how do you block that shit out, man?
Oh, I lean into it. I embrace it. So,
got it.
People will, I'm the first one to tell you, like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing, like, and even if I feel like I do sometimes, or I got a good handle on it, I never pretend to be the guy that knows what he's doing. Like, on the show, it may look different because they don't show all the boring stuff of me, talking or trying things or working in the computer or trying different things with the chassis or whatever. But because it's boring and people can't understand it. But
right.
if you ever see me at a real race, people ask me, what are you going to do with this? Or what are you going to do that? I don't fucking know. Is the road any good? I don't know. I don't know what a good road looks like. I haven't been on one yet. Like, I just embrace it. And then it always seems better if you walk around like, like you have no fucking idea what you're doing. And then if it goes fast, you go, holy shit, I don't know how the fuck I did that. Like, that was amazing, and then you just, eventually people realize that making fun of you or telling you don't know what you're doing doesn't work, because you've never claimed to. You know what I mean? I've never claimed to be a tuner. I've never claimed to be good at EFI. I've never claimed to be a chassis guy or anything else. So it's really hard for them to hurt my feelings, because I've never claimed to be any of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the best thing you can do is just pretend that if it goes fast, even a broke clock's right twice a day.
Right on. I think the answer there is lose the ego. You don't got to worry about the ego. I mean, it's just who cares? You're out there to do the
now
best you
when
can.
it comes to racing and winning, that is where I have a problem, and that is where my ego like is it has too much of a hold on me. So if somebody tells me that they're going to outrun me, that gets under my skin more than if someone says, you don't know what the fuck you're doing, or your car's a piece of shit, or
right,
you know, that motor's a piece of shit, or it's not, that thing ain't fast, you know, or fucking whatever. They can say whatever they want, and it doesn't ever bother me because I'm like, yeah, I've never claimed it to be fast. You know, I just claimed it that I can outrun you.
Right.
You know, but if they tell me they can beat me and then they beat me, that's what hurts.
Yeah, that hurts.
But yeah, but they tell me all the time that I'm a moron and I don't know what I'm doing, and everything I do is stupid. And if I make a change, that was the wrong thing to do. You need to go back to the car you had 3 years ago.
Don't change any. You don't change your plan because the numbers speak for themselves at the back end. So good shit, man. Man, I hate to bug this guy too much more. Dudes, I told him 20 or 30 minutes. It's been like an hour and a half. That's just, I don't even want to know what the bill's going to be for this one.
Yeah, but we're talking about I'd much rather talk about
Keep
this
going.
than
Keep at it.
You know, I'd much rather talk about this than talk about the same old shit that I always talk about, which is, you know, being number one. And
I don't know if you know, we're not a podcast that's trying to get listener number counts or anything like that. We don't really give a shit. It's so funny. I get all this advice. You know, Wes Buck will call me up, or I'll see him and he'll be like, oh, here's how you do this and all that. Or, you know, all these other guys are telling me how to do the social media. And I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit about that. We do it to fill up my classes that I have twice a month. And we do it just because it turns out to be really cool, because people would just kind of drop your guard and we just want to talk detailed tuning shit. So it kind of eliminates the, you know, 98% of the crowd that might watch Street Outlaws, but there's 2 or 3% of them out there that are truly interested in this shit. So we appreciate it, man.
I mean, the best thing I could tell you as a tuner or trying to be a tuner, tune your own car or whatever, the best thing I can tell you to do is, you know, you
go to a RealTuners class. No,
well, you can't. Well, yeah, no, I mean, go to, you know, obviously get all the information you can. Obviously, that's always the best idea. But the bottom line is, if I've met so many guys who are tuners that, you know, they walk around with laptops and you see them at the track every weekend, all the big races, and they're tuning 15 cars out there and shit. And, you know, but
the ones that have to pay the 30%.
Well, they're the ones that, you know, that their customer goes up there and can't spool it. It's sitting there for 20 minutes on the brake trying to spool it, or it won't idle. They got to clean it out after the burnout because it won't idle, or they got to fucking spray brake clean in it to get it fired up in the morning, you know, you know, but those guys will never, they can't learn anything because they know so much, you know, like they've told everybody they're tuners, you know, they've got that it's on their shirt, it says they're tuners. So how are they going to learn anything if they already know it all? You know, the best thing you can do is, if somebody else asks you a question about your car, if a Steve Petty or somebody like that, you know, one of the guys who are truly the guys that can tune a car from front to back, if Steve Petty or Chris Bell or, you know, any of those guys were to Jamie Miller, if they were to walk up and say, hey man, why does your car do this? Or why did you try this? It's not them trying to figure out what you're doing. It's really, they're asking you because there's something there that you don't know. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to help you without helping you. So you can't learn anything if you know it all. You know what I mean? That's the easiest part.
Interesting.
But if you walk around like a total moron, you know, then you got a better chance. Like when we were radio racing, I didn't know anything about it. And the car was going, it was going left. And the more power I put in it, the more it went left. And I kept fucking trying to put negative in it and do anything I could to get it to go straight. And this guy was walking down through there and he's like, what at 60 on that pass? I said 101. He's like, wow, that's the fastest turbo car of the day to the 60 foot. And I was like, yeah, I just got to get it to go straight. And I think it'll go fast. And he was like, you know, put a little rear steer in. I was like, what? And I just kind of walked over, I was like, who the fuck was that? And then, of course, the guy that was with me was like, you know, do you know who that fucking was? And I'm like, no. And he goes, that was Todd Tutterow. And I was like, oh, right on. Well, he just told me to cock the rear end in the car. And I think that's stupid, you know. Turns out it was perfect and it was the right thing to do. But, you know, hearing him say it, if I knew everything, you know, then that didn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? So it took me 2 races to ever even try it. So
nice.
You know, that's one of the reasons we do this podcast is because we like sharing as much information with the listeners as possible because we want them to be able to figure out how to do this stuff themselves. We want to help everybody. We make it so that they can enjoy having fun with their race car because hopefully they learn something cool that they didn't know before. And occasionally they come back and share stuff with us that they found out that we might not know as well. You know, you've given a huge wealth of information tonight of stuff that a lot of people just have no clue about. Most people don't know what to do when they go to a street. They just have to try things. Some guys are struggling for years before they figure out. Some guys guess right the first time, you know?
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Here's a good one.
The whole reason we do it is to share with people.
Yeah. No, okay, check this one out. Supercar's asking this one on Mixler. Does he run a mechanical fuel pump? Yes. And do you use a primer pump to start it? Not that I know of. Chief, are you using a primer
pump?
This is
I pride myself, and I never gave a shit until Scott Clark started coming around. I never gave a shit
Keith
until
Berry.
Or are we talking about Johnny Cold Start?
Right. Go on.
And I started like talking to guys that actually, you know, would tell me that, yeah, even though it's a race car and even though it's got nitromethane in it, and even though it's methanol, and even though it's got way too much fuel pump and way too much injector and blah, 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 it can still start and run like everything else.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that blew me away. I was like, what?
You paid for EFI.
No, it can't.
It should
like
run
this
like
is a race
fresh
car. It's not
minivan.
supposed to fucking idle.
Right.
You know, like it's not supposed to start in the morning. You're supposed to sit here and baby it for 20 minutes until it runs, you know, but but I can tell you that even at, you know, even with nitro in the car, even with the mechanical fuel pump, even with everything that I have going against me, I do not have a primer pump. I do not need one. I can lean in the car and hit the starter button, and it can be 10 degrees or 200 degrees outside, and it will start and idle without touching anything. And it doesn't have closed, and there's no closed loop either.
Right.
It's a lot easier to warm up a car when you don't have to pay attention to it.
Right.
Scott was talking about when the first FuelTech in Keith Berry's car, Keith still had his auto start remote. His remote car starter.
No, that's up. The ZL1. That's Tom McGilton. The Larson did. Yeah.
Oh,
they made me disable it.
Was Keith Berry the one that's like 30 degrees out on methanol?
No,
firing it up?
Barry's in the middle of winning an NMCA championship, but what is he making Facebook videos about? It blows his mind because the thing in 40 degrees will start on C16 like a brand new minivan, you know. And he was more excited about that than the fact that he was smashing everybody and took a title that year. But that was pretty hilarious.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you, I met a guy named he tunes for a very well-known street race on the West Coast, and he's one of the very best with factory ECUs and aftermarket ECUs. He's a really good. He's what I would actually consider a tuner, you know. And his name's Tom Van Vogt.
Tom's dude. I've known Tom for 30 years. He's one of my closest friends. Carry on, Tom Van
Vogt. The Tomster.
Yeah, you know Tom.
The great thing about
Well,
when I went to California to race those guys, you know, California, it's cold at night and hot during the day. And so when I got there, I got this guy and I had talked to him on the phone and text messages and Facebook and stuff before, but I never really like put the face with the name. And I got this guy, and every time I go near my car, he's kind of like walking by and looking at me, you know, looking at the car. And I'm just kind of like, who the fuck is this weirdo wearing like jeans and shit? You know, like everybody else has got Dickies, and, you know, this guy's wearing jeans and, you know, doesn't look like he belongs. And then when I finally go to race, I reached in to start the car. I hadn't started the car all night, and I reached in, and it was cold as shit outside. Reached in, didn't even get in the car, just reached in, hit the button. It fired up and started idling, and he just smiled huge, and he came over and he was like, "That's badass." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "That thing." He goes, "What fuel is that?" And I was like, "Well, at the time I was running M5." And he was like, "Mechanical fuel pump?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "No primer?" I was like, "No, hell no." He goes, "That is badass. When you can reach in and hit the button and fire it up and hit idle." He's like, "That's fucking cool." And then when I realized who he was, I was like, holy shit, he thinks I'm cool. Like he's an actual tuner, you know what I mean? And he thinks I'm cool, you know? And so ever since then, you know, we've shared stuff, and he's helped me a whole bunch, especially with the factory ECU stuff. And
that's what he knows. Yep.
Yeah. He's helped me a bunch. Like my Cadillac that Jackie drives, you know, it's now. I think it's the fastest Cadillac in the world with all stock shit. But it just
did you get
like
your tip in
887.
shit figured out on that thing?
What's that?
Did you get the tip in stuff figured out on that?
Yes, I
Good.
did actually, and
Nice.
it doesn't make any sense, and it's hacked to death. But
give it what it wants.
it is what it is. So, but yeah, he was the one who saw me do that, and he was just like, none of these other guys understand what that is. And he was like, but that right there is fucking cool. He's like, that damn thing just started and idled in 30-degree weather.
Yeah,
and that it means a lot when you can get compliments from guys like him. You know what I mean? So
that's funny. I didn't know you held
so
time
now
in such
I
high
shove it in
regard.
everybody else's face whenever their car can't start in the morning, and or whenever they got to sit there and keep it running or whatever, they need a primer pump. But it also bites me in the ass because at the end of the run, sometimes we run the fuel level low to get the front end to do what we want. And so at the end of the run, if I don't drive hard into the chutes, then it'll push the fuel away from the pump, and then I got to sit down there and crank it for 15 minutes to get it to make pressure and start.
Right.
And the guys with the primer pump are like, but whatever. At the same time, it's one of those things. I'm not going to have a primer pump because I feel like, I got enough shit on this car. I can make it start and idle.
Yep. Amen. No, I feel good about that because I've always been a drivability guy too. It's hilarious. I can't handle the shit don't run right.
Oh yeah. Well, you wouldn't let me go. You wouldn't even let me go full throttle on the dyno till like 28 fucking pulls in or something. You were like, you said, I don't care what happens. It's going to start, it's going to idle, and it's going to part throttle before we do anything else. We're not leaving here with a car that fucking sounds like it's got a blow through carburetor on it.
Christ, I've never heard that before.
Never dealt with that. It's the OCD. Sorry. No, we steady stated that car, man. I would get it right. Plus, the Chief had the right equipment, the right dyno to get it done too. That you have a nice dyno, man. That Mustang dyno, is that dual eddies on that one? I mean, it held back a lot.
No, it's just
single.
It's just single right now, but I think we may have had dual eddies back then. We just got the new one installed and the new software and stuff put in, and we're still.
Is it still Mustang?
Trying to learn that. Yeah, it's a Mustang. Yeah, it's
nice.
The brand new stuff. It's really, really easy, and it's a whole lot simpler than the old stuff, which makes it feel weird to me because, I'm like, well, what about this number? Would you have to do anything with this? What about that? And they're like, no, just make pulls. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Nice.
So I'm getting used to it, but yeah.
Good.
It was fun. But yeah, that helped me a lot, with you being so dead set on the car starting and idling and all that. It's made me that way ever since. Sean's car is the same way. My car.
You got to realize that was part of the testing that I was having to do for Anderson and those guys at FuelTech was to run through all those steps too, to make sure that shit's right. If it's got a weird tip-in behavior, like for a couple of weeks, I argued with them over acceleration enrichments and how they should work or whatever. And then they sent this Geraldo Bueno guy over here. He didn't speak a lick of English, but the dude knew accelerant enrichments, and he was working with their firmware guys and stuff like that. I mean, you remember I had an oscilloscope. How you turned your shop into a science fair project. You're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But as long as it worked.
Yeah, but we learned a lot. And what's crazy is I still have the same shit. It still isn't full sequential. The big set of injectors are sequential, but the other ones are still semi. I haven't changed any of that. It's still got the distributor and the big HVC MSD coil.
Because it works.
How big of injectors are you running?
Yeah,
I got the Precision 225s on the primary side, and then I have the Precision 550s on the secondaries, and then the pump is the Aeromotive. I call it the Terminator, but I guess they don't call it that anymore. It's just a big spur gear pump, so it's like a 21 gallon per minute pump or whatever.
Right.
But
nice.
I run the Precision injectors because they work great, and they run really good, and you make a lot of fucking power with them. But also because I am usually working on every other part of the race car, and I don't want to work on that. So I've never needed to have a spare set of injectors. I've never needed to have. I don't have to run gas through it, or I run nitro or M5, whatever you want to. I'm at 10% most of the time, 15% sometimes, and I run the fuel at 5-10 degrees most of the time when I put it in the car. And I'm not very good about changing the fuel filter or filtering the fuel as it goes in the car. I'm not very good about checking any of that stuff. So those injectors they're bulletproof. So I don't have to run gas through it. I don't have to do any maintenance to it whatsoever. I still got the same set of injectors in the car that I had when I crashed the first one, so
right.
it's
Damn.
You ever have
they're
them
just
rebuilt or checked or anything?
Yeah.
what's that?
Do you flow test them at all or anything like that?
We had an issue with what we thought was an injector. We had an issue with some weird EGT readings on one of the cylinders, and in some of the videos I could see some weird puffs out of one side, and it was making a way more boost than it ever did on the brake. So that to me was a signal that it was misfiring. And so I took the injectors over to the place locally here, Deechworks, and had them look at them and go through them and flow them and all that stuff. And turns out it was an output got switched around somehow. So
yep,
I had one injector that wasn't firing when it was supposed to. So
right, getting stepped on by something else.
Fixed that, but yeah, we've had Deechworks has gone through and flowed them and checked them and everything, but it never really had to do anything to them, which is cool. Not knocking the atomizer injectors because they're amazing.
Sure.
I had those when I was on gasoline, and they say they spool faster, and they're they make huge injectors that work really well. It's just I've never been really good about doing the maintenance side of that. I'm not the guy that wants to come home from the race and put gasoline in it or clean it or whatever. Like I'm the guy who comes home from the race and starts fucking changing tires or liners or whatever.
Let me ask this. When I came out to visit you guys, it was 9 weeks on and 1 or 2 weeks off, which literally amounted to a harder schedule than like a pro stock team. What kind of schedule? How often do you got to have that car ready? Your car is your fleet ready to race. Is it still every other weekend? Are you racing? How many weekends a month?
Well, the way television works is everything is just the same way as in racing. In my opinion, it's all time based. So the more successful you are at television, the less time you have off, because you're only going to be successful at that time, so the quicker you can get on television and get things filmed, then the better off you are. So when we're filming, we film nonstop, and then we very rarely get breaks or time off to do anything, which is why it's so critical that when you do have time off, you do whatever big shit you want to do. But luckily, the other television show, the No Prep Kings show, has helped a little bit because almost all the guys from the Street Outlaws show run the No Prep Kings show. So that's given us more time off while they're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have like 2 weeks while they're out doing that, and then they come home, and then we'll race for 2 weeks or whatever. But this last time we went straight for, God, I don't even know how many weeks. And the thing that sucks is when you're racing, they usually want you to do 1 or 2 race nights a week, which is like your Super Bowl every week. And then they want you to test once or twice a week, which I would like to test 2 or 3 times a week. And then at some point you got to work on the car. And then I still have to do the voiceovers and the narration part, and then the interviews and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's literally, it consumes every bit of your life, but you also get to drag race for a living. Yeah. And unless you're one of the chosen few in the world that either worked your ass off or was born into Top Fuel, that you don't get to drag race for a living as a human being on this earth right now. So I'm getting to do it. So I'll work as hard as they need me to,
Nice. So the answer is hard. That's how hard they work.
Yes. Yeah. Fuck. It's nonstop.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else before we let this guy
go? It also really just hones your skill too, though. You know what I mean? Because you have to be able to do it so fast.
Right. Yeah. The quick turnaround is what blew me away. And plus you're going through all kinds of consumables and parts. It's an expensive proposition. And people don't realize.
Right. So you have to find over time though, you find the parts that, you find the parts that you need, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like the Rossler transmission, like that was the thing that put me, miles ahead of everybody else, was going to the Rossler, because you can run 2-3 seasons in a turbo car on the street and not have to do any maintenance or anything to it,
Right.
And so you find that stuff, you know what I mean? And you stick with that shit.
Gotcha. Anybody else? I am not going to go over 2 hours. We're killing this guy's evening. What?
No, dude, hey man,
I
I'm
had a
having fun.
great show. My dogs are going mental in the background, so I got nothing. But I do want to say thank you for doing this. It's been awesome.
Man. Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, dude.
I
It was
appreciate. Hey,
kick-ass.
thanks for the opportunity. And it's weird because, dude, I do shows all the time on radio or podcasts or whatever. I do them, as much as I can, and I'm usually not nervous because it's usually shit that I'm good at talking about, or I'm funny and I can play off of stuff. But this show, I was really nervous because I was like, dude, what do you want me to say, man? Because I'm not a tuner. There's plenty of guys that listen to this show probably that could out-tune me any day of the week. You know what I mean?
Proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that
you fit
are
right in. Yeah. No, you're doing fine. Getting lots of good compliments. And you're welcome to sit anytime you want, man. We do this every Wednesday night. So we've been doing it for 2 years now. 2 years this week.
Hell yeah, man. Bro, anything I can do to be a part of it or to help out, let me know. Or if or questions or whatever, just shoot them to me and I'll get them or whatever.
As always, you've always been approachable.
If you're doing any of your classes or whatever, I'll come to your classes and I'm sure I could learn a lot.
We need to find a place down by you guys. I need to do an OKC one again. It's been a year. So I'll talk to you about that offline. But
let's do it at the fucking
anybody
track.
that has a shop and a dyno in OKC?
No, hear him? I want to do it at the track.
But the dyno thing isn't gonna, that like, let's go to the racetrack with my car.
Yep.
And fucking show them what the data looks like and show them what happens if you shift it too later, if you shift it too early, or if you put fuel in it too later, if you don't put fuel.
If you do a class like that, I'm signing up myself.
I've done 2 already. Doug Cook at Motion had one, a private one at the track, and it was off the fucking chain cool because we'd come around and we'd stage right there in the park, everybody right there in the lanes, and we rented the track. We rented Cordova. We had one lane. We had Bubba, but Cordova, really good Bubba prep. He's the guy that was from Holly Springs on one lane. And the other lane was, purposely crap. And it ended up being one of the best classes we'd ever had. So I'll talk to you offline. We'll do something like that.
Yeah, and we could do it any way you want. We'll bring my car and we'll let the guys saw some spark plugs off or whatever, and saw some straps off and see what it takes to hurt the thing. Or they can bring their cars and, we can try shit with their cars. Whatever works,
totally
just let me know. I'm down for whatever.
I will. I'll let you know. We'll do something. So cool. All right. Well, I'm going to let him go, man. That was good shit. You can hang around and chat for a few minutes if you want. We stay online afterwards, but I'm going to go ahead and play the outro stuff. And then,
okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, guys. Thank you very much. And
thanks, Justin.
Good luck to everybody. Let me know if you need me, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. That was pretty cool. Huge thanks to Mr. Justin Shearer for joining us tonight. Check out RealTuners.com for class schedules. We're going to put some more online. Sounds like we're going to do another track class down in Oklahoma City sometime soon, maybe this fall. So anyway, keep in touch. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Everybody have a good night. Be safe.